Can Walter Clayton Jr. be the end of the Jazz pick and roll woes? It's next on Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? And welcome to today's edition of Locked on Jazz from a snowy Park City, Utah. We bring you Locked on Jazz. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for listening to Locked on Jazz and making this your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. And to the everydayers out there, you are truly the best there are. We appreciate it so much. Got exciting things coming for the everydayers, probably not till December, but exciting things coming for you. Today's show is brought to you in part by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Here's the show today. We will do the Eastern Conference 240. If you tuned in yesterday, the 240 is where we evaluate every roster and figure out whether they actually have 240 minutes of NBA basketball on their roster. We will look at that in regards to all the Eastern Conference teams. Some surprises up top. Two teams that I think, or at least one team that may have a much better year than anyone anticipates. And we'll look at that as well. Next week, we'll do our points gained offensive rankings and see where teams rank, kind of project where they'll be defensively. And then that's how we'll have our predictions for the season. That has not been if I'm being totally transparent, that has not been actually as great an indicator as I'd hoped in the last 2 years. I've got to kind of evaluate what's gone wrong there. So I'll look at that this weekend. This actually has been fairly good. This idea of like 240 minutes carrying you through an 82-game NBA season and teams being able to maybe weather injuries better than others or not being able to weather injuries at all. This has actually been a pretty good indicator. So if you want Western Conference, we did that yesterday. Today, we're doing the Eastern Conference. We are starting with whether or not Walt Clayton can end the Jazz pick and roll woes. Let's establish where the Jazz were pick and roll wise. Obviously, the Jazz were not a great team last year, so when we look at stats, it's not always the best mechanism to be able to, we're not going to we don't rank particularly high on much of anything, right? I guess is my point with that comment. But here's where we ranked last season in a bunch of categories. In the pick and roll game overall, we ranked 26th in the NBA. We ranked 25th in frequency. So we did not run a lot of pick and roll. I do think the league's going away from the pick and roll. The pick and rolls per game was down about 5 this year, which is a lot last year. And it feels in training camp, watching NBA games right now, that everything is a handoff. Far more off-ball action and far more handoffs through a big that spreads. It's the way of spreading the floor to get 5 out. That's at least the feeling I have right now. The Jazz ran the 22nd most amount of pick and rolls that ended in a ball handler and 18th most in a man. We ranked 28th in offensive efficiency in the pick and roll. Okay, we can discuss the pick and rolls becoming less important. It is still the most common play in the league by a large margin. So, we can discuss all of this and, the handoff's more important and we're more of an off-ball team. Great. You're still running more pick and rolls per game than you're running any other play in the game. Some of our numbers weren't great. So of guys, particularly of guys returning, Colin Sexton was our best pick and roll guard. Of our guards that returned that actually matter, Keyonte George averaged 0.94 points per possession. What does that mean? Okay, right. Great, David. That's a silly number. Looking at the 71 players who ran at least 800 pick and rolls, Keyonte ran 1,400. Keyonte ranked 56th out of 71. Okay, that's not horrific. And he's young, and that's where a lot of young guards sit. Jalen Green is 57th. Stephen Castle's 55th. You'd be surprised Desmond Bane, who's actually more of a shooter than a pick and roll guy, is 53rd. So that's where a lot of guys sit, frankly. DeJounte Murray, LaMelo Ball, Scoot Henderson, Cole Anthony, they're all kind of right in that group of being in the 21st percentile of guards. Keyonte took about 32 pick and rolls per 100 possessions. That's right in the middle of the pack. Just to give you the 10 best in the NBA, Ty Jerome in Cleveland, which will be interesting. One, how much they miss him, and two, whether he keeps that up when he moves. Darius Garland, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Halliburton, DeMar DeRozan, Dame Lillard, Austin Reeves, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, James Harden, Derek White, Trae Young, Steph Curry, Jalen Brunson, Chris Paul, Tyler Hero, Andrew Nembhard, Peyton Pritchard. Here's what's interesting to me on that group is that 3 of the first 5 guys are all Cleveland Cavaliers, which makes you wonder how much of this is Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And that gets into part 2 of our Jazz pick and roll problems. Our bigs are not good at pick and roll right now. Walker Kessler last year in 1,100 pick and roll opportunities averaged 0.87 points per pick and roll, which ranked, okay, what does 0.87 mean? Ranked of the 71 guys who set the most picks. I sorted this out by 71 bigs and 71 guards. Walker ranked 69th out of 71. Kyle Filipowski in 672 ranked 57th out of 71. So if we actually look at this, and I think I said this, but if I didn't, Isaiah Collier ranked 69th out of 71. Of the 4 guys we kind of have left, Nurkic not counting, who are going to run pick and roll for us right now that are returners, Keyonte George and Isaiah Collier, Walker Kessler and Kyle Filipowski, they actually absolutely mirror each other perfectly with their rankings. Keyonte was 56 out of 71, and Kyle Filipowski was 57th out of 71. Isaiah Collier was 69 out of 71, and Walker Kessler was 69 out of 71. I don't know whether which comes in what order. Isaiah Collier and Walker Kessler and Isaiah Collier and Kyle Filipowski both were particularly poor. They're 2 of the worst combinations of any 2 in the NBA. Walker and Isaiah Collier were 0.78. Kyle Filipowski and Isaiah Collier were 0.79. Is that the fault of whom? I don't know. I don't know enough. I think lack of shooting hurts on that one, but I truly don't know enough. And now, how do the Jazz get better at the pick and roll game? Some of this is obviously just development, I think, of guys getting older and better and understanding more and being better at these things and all of that. I think that's probably, the first one we always have to give into. But there's a level where I think Walker is trying to develop, setting his pick better. Isaiah Collier's got to be able to shoot better. I mean, the Isaiah Collier-Walker-Kessler combination was the 3rd worst of 159 pick and roll combinations. Only Keon Johnson and Nick Claxton and Tyrese Maxey and Andre Drummond were worse. The Kayvon Looney and Andre Drummond were the only 2 players who had less good pick and roll combinations. Now, let me also be clear on something here. Like when you look at the bigs that are bad at pick and roll, you see Andre Drummond and Kayvon Looney. When you look at the combinations that aren't very good, you get a Trace Jackson Davis in here who's in his 2nd year. You get Alex Sarr, who's a rookie. You get Donovan Clingan, who's a rookie. It's Donovan Clingan and Shaden Sharp, Donovan Clingan and Denny Advida were the 8th and 9th worst pick and roll combinations out of 150 combinations last year. And we'll see, and we will see that tonight. Scoot Henderson was right there with him. So there is something about learning as a big on how to set picks and what to do and how to play that game and do all of those kind of things. I think there's something really to this. Now, the question I started this with, is there a chance that Walt Clayton can be the answer to our pick and roll problems? Walter Clayton last year ran 245 pick and rolls, or was the handler that on 245 pick and rolls that ended in his hands last year. That was in the 92nd percentile of all guards. He was very good at it. He was in the 77th percentile in points per possession. His effective field goal percentage was 50%. His off the bounce shooting, his dribble jumpers last year, he took 245 off the bounce threes last year, or off the bounce dribbles last year, shots last year. He made 95 of them shooting 39%, which is not a bad number in college, for a 54% effective field goal percentage. And a lot of those are clearly threes. He was in the 90th percentile of all off the bounce 3-point shooters. That's the pick and roll game right there. His time, he did it the 94th percentile. He was in the most common dribble jumpers in the NBA or in college basketball last year. And so as we watch Walt Clayton here in the 4th preseason game tonight, let's see what he does in pick and roll, because he's coming left to right and getting a little bit open on those shots. That's something the Jazz need. I think Keyonte has a good pick and roll game in him. So I think you're going to see that a little bit more with Key than we've seen so far, but there is a chance that Walt Clayton can be a little bit of an answer here. The other one is Ken Kyle. Can Kyle play a stretch 5 big in a pick and roll or a pick and pop game? The Jazz pick and pop game with Lowry Markkanen has been very good. Can Kyle do the same thing? We'll touch a little bit more, elaborate more on Kyle before we get into the Eastern Conference 250 or 240 as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you in part by our friends over at FanDuel. That's right. The game is in the action. The NFL is here. Everyone's firing up, having a great time. And now is your opportunity to get in the game with FanDuel. FanDuel opening up opportunities for you as a new bettor. If you bet $5, you win bonus bet up to $300 right now. You win bonus. You actually not up to. You get, if you win your first $5 bet, you get $300 in bonus bets. So find the Saturday college football line that's really off and go take advantage of it, whether it's East Carolina minus 16.5 or I don't know, what's a big line this week? Ooh, Toledo is a 26.5 point favorite over Kent State. You might need to check with people if you're, never mind, that's a side note. Ohio State, by the way, the favorite to win the college football national title right now. Alabama, Miami, Florida. Indiana's 4th. And Oregon is 6th at plus 1,200 despite losing. They've also got all the soccer that's going on right now. And you can get into the NBA action, the futures, all that. But get your $5 bet. We're Jazz are 2.5 point underdogs tonight in preseason basketball. That's all at FanDuel.com. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. So Filipowski's interesting to me. He didn't play well in his preseason game. I don't care. He's been dealing with a back injury, just didn't look right. He didn't look like any lift, which he didn't really have last year either, but I do think it was accentuated by the fact that he is probably coming off a back issue and probably a little ginger and just trying to trust everything again. So that would be my thought. Hopefully. Kyle's interesting in this pick and roll conversation because we've got to figure out what he is offensively. Is he just a handoff big, playing the hub around him and doing those kind of things? Or is he got the opportunity to play some pick and roll where he's really a threat going either direction? So last year at the rim, he finished 66% of his shots, which for a big is in the 39th percentile of all bigs. And that's anything that's out inside 4 feet. He's decent on his floater game. He actually shot 56% in that kind of floater before he gets to the rim. And I talked to him before the year, and he said he has studied Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic and other guys who don't get off the floor a lot. And I want to talk to him some more about it and to find out what it is he saw and learned and things like that to figure out how he's going to finish at the rim. So if Kyle can play like a mid-pocket pick and roll where he's playing pick and roll, maybe you're not trying to hit him on top of the rim or the way you did Rudy, but you're catching him maybe in the middle of the paint, and then he can conduct it out to the wings. He could be a really interesting big pick and roll big. 1, if he can pop and make the 3. 2, if he can play in the mid pocket, and then if the defense clutch comes down, you're getting the corner 3s out of him because he's such a great passer. He's so amazingly skilled offensively. So I'm really curious to see whether or not Kyle can pick up on some of these pieces and he can actually become a pick and roll big for the Jazz. He has not been that so far, as we mentioned, right? He ranked 57th out of 71, but he's a rookie. And so I'm just not concerned about that at all. He does play a lot of isolation, when he gets the ball on the wing and puts on the deck. He was not good at that last year. Again, he was a rookie, but he was really bad. He was 0.75 points per isolation. So that's not a great answer right now, the jump there. And I think he's not a great answer because really finishing at the rim's not an answer yet. Now, if he adds that, boy, his offensive game explodes. And it's funny, we've talked so much about whether Kyle can defend and all of that. I'm actually at the point right now where I'm going to go the other way. I'm not going to it's going to be a real task for Kyle to learn how to defend correctly in the NBA with a short wingspan and not a ton of athleticism laterally. He's worked really hard and improved his lateral numbers and not a huge vertical presence. These are going to be hard. Okay, that's going to be hard. He'll figure that out. He's pretty smart. I just want to really see I want him to be great offensively. And I want to see if that's what he can actually do, is become an elite offensive player. And so these are some of the ways to do it. One of them is to become more than just kind of a fulcrum where you're dishing and doing that, because that often leads into his one-on-one game, which I don't think is a strength. Can he be a pick and roll big where he's playing mid-pocket, making the pass out, or popping out for threes? Frankly, popping bigs, pick and roll numbers are really good if they're good. And you can see it. Lowry's our best so far in 2 years with that, somewhat because of who he is and somewhat because of just getting the big out opens up so much more for everybody. So, all right, two guys to watch in the Jazz pick and roll game. I don't have numbers yet on preseason and what pick and roll numbers are. Not that I would think a lot about them, but will be interesting to watch where the pick and roll is early in the year for the Jazz and if that can become somewhat of an offensive weapon for them. All right, let's look at the Eastern Conference 240. We'll start at the top. And again, if you're new to this, NBA roster or NBA game has 5 players on the floor for 48 minutes, which equals 240. So this is how many teams have 240 minutes of viable offensive play or viable players. So viable rotation players established. Rookies, other than Cooper Flagg, get a 0. Almost all second-year players got a 0. There's one in the Eastern Conference that has me buckled. I'll share that with you. It kind of depends where you put that team. The concept here is, one, if you need 240 minutes to win a title, you cannot have guys that are not NBA players playing, and we've seen that in the playoffs the last few years. 2 is for a regular season survival. If you suddenly are at 210 and somebody gets hurt as a 30-minute night player, you're suddenly at 180. Now you're suddenly playing 33% of your minutes that night by non-viable NBA rotation players. You lose. So that's a lot of what this is. So let's walk through the Eastern Conference. The top of the list is New York at 267. Malcolm Brogdon just retired. I got to be honest, I don't remember. I probably did have Malcolm Brogdon in there and as 15 minutes a night of viable NBA, as a viable NBA player. So let's do a quick check again on the Knicks, because that actually happened since I did this 2 days ago. But the Knicks actually are a little misleading because Thibodeau played them so many minutes that everybody is kind of ups their minutes. But Brunson 35, OG Anunoby 35, Mikal Bridges 35, Josh Hart 35, and Karl Anthony Towns 35. Miles McBride 25, Jordan Clarkson 17, Landry Shamet 15, Yabusele 15, and Mitchell Robinson should not be 15 because that would be too many minutes. So Mitchell Robinson 13 if Karl Anthony Towns is at 35. And that, I think, is it. So I did not have Malcolm Brogdon in there. The Knicks come out to 260 viable minutes. Pretty big time. The Knicks are really legit. They've got, with Mike Brown as their head coach, which is mixed feelings on, but they do have a guy. They do have 260 viable minutes, and they'll probably come down a little bit. Not everybody will play 35. They'll all play 32. But if guys get hurt, they're going to be fine. So the Knicks lead the Eastern Conference minutes, tied with Atlanta. Atlanta with Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Risha Shea, I gave him 25, Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, Vic Krejci, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, Okongwu. Those 9 all are in there. And then they have Caleb Houston on the roster as well, who's, I think, pretty good little shooter and player. And so all of a sudden this team's pretty deep. Rookie Asa Newell doesn't get anything. And so Atlanta comes in at a pretty good number there at 260 as well. Probably 255 is a better number for them. But they're number two or three on the list. Orlando is third in the Eastern Conference with the deepest roster. And Orlando is the kind of one of these in picks. They were the 28th ranked team in the NBA in pick and roll last year, so they better figure that out. Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr., Tyus Jones, Jonathan Isaac, Mo Wagner, Anthony Black, who I did give, but I'm not sure, and Goga Baktazi as well, loads them up. Tristan Da Silva, we'll see whether he is just in little Jace Richardson and Jed Howard. I did not actually classify as established NBA minute players at this point. Here's your two surprises. So I don't think anything's a surprise there. New York, Atlanta, Orlando, Cleveland's the in pick. And then those are the next three that everyone's talking about in the Eastern Conference. Here are your two surprises in the Eastern Conference, or actually, how about I get you your two surprises next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz also brought to you by our friends over at Wayfair. Holidays are going to be here before you know it, which is great. Getting your home ready for guests and celebrations can be a lot. So maybe your serveware needs a refresh. Your guest room needs new bedding. Maybe you have a new house you're building so that you can have it ready by Thanksgiving. Wayfair has everything you need to get your home and holiday ready, from Christmas trees and wreaths to bedding, cookware, outdoor inflatables. It's your one-stop shop for every room in the house. Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection from every style and budget. With free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge delivery fees. So right now, it's easy to find the pieces you want that can fit your budget and your style over at Wayfair. The delivery is fast and free, which is fairly life-saving. Get organized, get refreshed, get ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now for shopping all things. That's Wayfair, WAYFAR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season officially here. Nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. So let's get those tickets and let's get them without making it a headache. Between waiting in queue, surprise fees, I don't need to list all the bad things. That's negative juju. Let's talk about the good stuff. That's Game Time. It's easy. It gets it there for you. The app gives the fans a real advantage. It's the ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast and easy and stress-free. I use Game Time all summer on concerts and saved a bunch of money by waiting to the last minute. And their zone deals are game changers. You can pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, and you save big. You can even get NBA tickets for under $25. Take a guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. The two surprises are Miami and Chicago. So Miami is at 257 minutes, well over the 240 threshold. It's not impressive, but they're all viable NBA players, and it's going to win them a bunch of games that people don't expect, and Miami's just going to do Miami things. But Miami's got Tyler Hero's out right now, but Norman Powell, Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo. I don't actually have – I think I gave Khalil Ware 15 minutes as a second-year player, so maybe that's a stretch. Jakob Junis gets nothing. Jaime Jaquez is an established NBA player, 20 minutes a night. Jovic is 25 minutes a night. Precious Achiuwa is 20 minutes a night, maybe 15. Simone Fontecchio is 15 minutes a night. Terry Rozier's not good at all, but he's probably 15, 20 minutes a night. And we'll see whether if they can get Terry Rozier out of the lineup and get Kasparis in the lineup, that'd be great for them. And we'll see whether Khalil Ware actually does that. That would be the one question mark. But Precious Achiuwa is right behind him. That team's super deep. The next one that's interesting is Chicago. And I really like Bazulis. I think Bazulis had one of the better rookie years, showed he can play. If you give Bazulis 20 minutes, they go to 249. Again, over the 240. So you have New York, Atlanta, Orlando, Miami, and Chicago all over 240. It's a lot. Surprising. You can do the Western Conference. I did yesterday's show if you want to go back. But Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Isaac Okoro, Nikola Vucevic, Trey Jones, Ayo Sumo, Kevin Huerter, Patrick Williams, all pretty well established, and Zach Collins. Plus, they have Jalen Smith, who I did not give established player. They have Javon Carter, who can come off the bench, but he's not a rotation player. Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry might be okay. And then you've got Matthias Bazulis. If you give Bazulis 20 minutes, which I think he's going to probably is the right thing to do, they're at 249. I would suspect that Chicago is a playoff team this year, a top 6 playoff team this year, which will knock somebody out. All right, let's get to Cleveland because they're really interesting. They're at 234. They're a little short. The numbers usually say you got to have 240 to be a championship team. They have Donovan, Hunt, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Darius Garland for a 6 starting 5. I don't know that I think Thomas Bryant is established rotation center. They have Larry Nance, who I like. So you can give Larry Nance 20 minutes a night if he can stay healthy. You have Dean Wade, who I think you can give 20 minutes a night. You have Sam Merrill, who I think you can probably give 25 minutes a night. And then you have Lonzo Ball, who I think you can give like 15 or 20 minutes a night, and that gets them to 234, but that's thin. They're relying on Craig Porter, who I'm not sure. They're relying on Thomas Bryant. I'm not sure. I do like Jalen Tyson, their second-year player. I'm not sure. You have Max Strus in here as well, who probably deserves, I put him in there at 26. And so they're right on the edge. Lonzo Ball is really going to be key to them. They're going to need Lonzo Ball to be able to play 15 or 20 minutes a night without having knee problems. And then that probably gets them over 240. So I wouldn't knock them out of championship contender, but they're thinner than the other championship contending teams. They're much thinner than New York. Milwaukee comes in at 223. Toronto comes in at 218. Here was a big surprise to me. Detroit came in at 213. That's really short. Like and that's assuming that guys don't get it. I do not have Ron Holland as a rotation player in the NBA. So if he pops, then they got it. But otherwise, they're at 213 out of 240. Like if you think about this for a second, that's 30 minutes of non-NBA time every night until someone gets hurt, and then that's 50. I keep an eye on Detroit struggling a little bit more than everyone thinks. Charlotte's at 201, no surprise. And then Indiana without Tyrese Halliburton is also at 201. But Jarice Walker's the wild card here. If Jarice Walker can play 25 minutes a night, Indiana suddenly pops ahead of Milwaukee and right below Cleveland and right behind all the teams that are 240. And actually, I think becomes much better team than anyone thinks, even without Tyrese Halliburton this year. Boston, on the other hand, no chance. If you're wondering if either of the teams with guys that are out with Achilles tendons for the year and what's going to happen with them, Indiana, if Jarice Walker can hit and actually be an NBA rotation player, then they have a chance. And if Johnny Furpey maybe comes around, their second-year player, seems like a jump, but possibly. Indiana's at 201. They could get to 230. They could be right in that secondary group. Boston is at 163 NBA established rotation minutes right now. And if you give Peyton Pritchard 30, it's maybe at 173. But Boston, if you hear people telling you that they think Boston is going to be able to make a run this year even without Jason Tatum, because nope. No way on Boston. Philadelphia is at 198. No VJ Edgecombe because no rookies, but still, Philadelphia just does not have a roster. And when you start adding Tobias Harris, or you start adding Paul George being old and Joel Embiid missing games, that one's going to be hard. So The final note I would have is that Brooklyn's at 130 and Washington's at 100. So I don't think the Jazz are going to have the worst record in the NBA. Those two teams are at a totally different level. Here's my Eastern Conference takeaways. New York is championship deep and championship good. Atlanta, Orlando, Cleveland are all there like expected. Miami and Chicago are deeper than people think. Detroit and Philadelphia are thin. Look for Detroit to have some problems how thin they are. Indiana could surprise. No chance Boston does. That's Locked On Jazz today. Jazz and the Blazers final preseason game. We'll be back with you tomorrow. It's a Friday edition, so that's an Ask LOJ edition tomorrow. Look forward to having your questions coming in. We'll have fun tonight on the broadcast with Ron. Please tune in. If you're at the arena, stop by, pick up a Locked On Jazz sticker. They're cool. Let me see. I knew I had one the other day. Here they are. They're cool. They're purple. Get in with the purple. Get your Locked On Jazz sticker tomorrow or tonight. Talk to you soon. This has been Locked On Jazz. We now send you over to the first ever 24/7 national NBA channel, Locked On NBA on YouTube, or if you're on audio, make sure you check out Locked On NBA with Wes, Hayes, and the great Matt Moore.